Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of theCUBE's live coverage of UiPath Fusion 2025. I'm your host, Rebecca Knight, along with Dave Vellante, my co-host and analyst. I would like to welcome to the show Daniela Rosenstein, Agentic AI and RPA lead at Cato Networks. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you, great being here.
And back for more is Taqi Jaffri, Senior Director of Product Management at UiPath. Thank you so much for returning to the show, Taqi.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, so I want to offer a congratulations, honorable mention here at the UiPath AI 25 Awards. Before we get into what you won for, can you describe a little bit about what Cato Networks does?
Yeah, so Cato is a network security company. We basically have our own SASE platform, which basically give the full visibility, and I think that Cato is already well known and pretty much established itself in the industry. We've been up for 10 years now, and it just keeps on growing like crazy.
So, I was a judge, as you know, as we were talking about, and the Zendesk IT service use case was really interesting. So I wonder if we could talk about that. It was thousands of tickets coming in a day from Zendesk, and people had to manually review them, classify them, route them. It took hours and hours and hours. So that's kind of, describe the before and the after. Let's get into how you did it and how long it took and what role Taqi's company played, all of that.
And I have to say, for the integrity of the judging process, this is the first time you guys met.
Oh yes, no.
100%, yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna tell you the whole story. So I've joined Cato 7 months ago, something like that. I come from a background of using UiPath for the last 7 or 8 years, something like that. And when I started working in Cato, so we started looking for use cases. And the first one that we wanted to address was support, because eventually it's the most important operation that we have, like providing the best support we can to our clients. And we wanted to start with a small use case, and we started talking about classification. And I think that the business was slightly skeptical in the beginning of like how this is gonna work and if it will be actually a good one. And we started understanding the use case and understanding the business. And the need was to address the classification category when the ticket is closed. So a ticket can be open from hours to days, right? And there's like a lot of support engineers who will review it through its life cycle. And then there's one support engineer who will close the ticket and will have to give it the right classification. Those classification will be used furthermore for data analysis, for strategic business decisions, and so on and so on. And we wanted to like find the right classification for every ticket to have this data correct. So the business process itself is basically reviewing the ticket and just giving the right classification to it.
And all of that was done by humans in the past.
Definitely.
And so you said it was a rather small use case. Can you, but as you said, it also is a pretty critical one, because that is, in fact, what you do in providing timely support to your customers. So it actually doesn't seem so small.
So it's true. It's like, eventually the part of classifying the ticket takes like a few minutes, right? It's in the end of the ticket when it's closed and the work is done. But the fact is, and that's something I haven't realized myself when we started working on it, how important it is to the business, because they actually fully analyze this data and they take it on and like decide on which project to work forward and how to improve the support. And that was actually the thing. So the process itself is a few minutes, but it's so crucial and so critical to the business.
Okay, so we kind of get a understand the before. What does the after look like? How long have you been sort of applying the agents? Let me start with, how long did it take to get up and running and trusted that you could actually automate this with agents?
So the amazing thing was that I think that after, I would say 2 months, it was in production, and I'm saying 2 months since the minute I joined Cato. And that's like onboarding processes and so on and so on. So it was pretty fast, the first version of it. And then we went into kind of enhancing the process and improving the classifications, because we've realized that the agent might have the classification correct, but the classification itself is kind of outdated. So when we started testing and reviewing everything, we realized that we need to go back and to find the right definitions for the classifications, because we were basing everything on one document that was written 3 years ago, which was super outdated. So I did some reverse engineering on the tickets. I took a lot of tickets, created clusters, and from there we went on and had the new categories, approved them with the business, adjusted them with the business, and went with the last version that we currently have running in production, and yeah.
What's the business impact been? So you've gone, I think, from hours to minutes, I read, but what about the quality? And I don't know if you've quantified the dollars, but what can you share with us in terms of the before and the after?
So I don't have the numbers for that, but I can tell you that it went from having every classification of few minutes, right, to 0, and which is amazing, the
infinite improvement.
Yeah, yeah.
So Taqi, I want to bring you in here for this conversation, because yesterday we had you on with Jerry Liu, who is the founder and CEO of Llama Index, and that was more of the theoretical, here's how this could work, and now we're actually seeing this come to life and have a real impact on a business.
Right, so I think Daniela was correct when she said they started small, but I think, as you correctly pointed out, it's big impact, but the scope is small, right? And that's something that I think has been a trend in this entire conference, that in order to have real ROI from an agent, you have to very clearly scope what it does and have almost a narrow and very specific definition of what you're feeding it or what you're expecting out of it. So I think that's the way I would characterize it. It's small in scope, but big in impact. And I think that's great to see as a practical example of the theoretical conversation we were having yesterday. Now, in addition, Daniela is using LangGraph. I was very happy to learn yesterday when I was talking to her. And that's an amazing ecosystem of developers and plugins and lots of how-to videos online. And if you just go on YouTube and search, you'll see all these different code samples and walkthrough tutorials. And I think that really also has a role in getting the agent to production quickly, because you're not learning something new from scratch, you're benefiting from all this energy and community ecosystem, et cetera. So I think that was a fascinating thing that I found yesterday as well.
So, and I found in one of my notes, it says your classification accuracy is around 90%, is that correct?
I would say it's even more, and let me tell you that. When you go and you try to classify tickets, maybe you and I will look at the same ticket and we'll have different category in mind, because you're coming from product, I'm coming from support, someone's coming from engineering. So eventually we've realized that we will never have 100%, and that's okay.
Right.
But we're okay with that margin, and that's good enough for us for our analysis and for future analysis.
And you're saving hundreds of hours per month in IT personnel time that you can redirect. Does that sound about right, or?
So I think that might be a mix from a different process that we're started developing as well, but we can talk about this one as well,
what's that
which
process?
is related to IT.
Talk about how people's jobs have changed, because here's a tedious task that took a few minutes and some brain power to classify it, and as you said, there might be some differences, some subjective differences. But talk about now that that's no longer something that these IT support people have to do.
So I think that when this project was basically some sort of a POC. I just joined the company and we wanted to show the capabilities and how it works. And from that, we took it further on for our next project. So the one that I think that Dave was talking about was the IT project that we started working on. And there we actually took the IT ticketing system, we were working with Fresh. And that's a different project completely. And we started analyzing the tickets that come into our ecosystem, which come from our employees eventually. And we realized that around 60% of the tickets are pretty repetitive. People ask for licenses, they have the same requests most of the time. And we generated an agent, and this one is currently in testing. We generated an agent which is able to read the ticket, to review the ticket, and to have the call for action. And then to just like assign people in the company where they required license, or to give them the support they need, or actually if someone wants to restart a password, right? They're gonna open a ticket for IT, and then we're gonna have they would be able to look that up in Google. But that's what we do. So instead of having a human reviewing that and just copy paste from Google, we'll have the agent doing that for us. And that will probably, like, we do expect here to have like our IT teams like free a lot of time there.
So what's happening, Taqi, and right in front of us is the input costs are going down.
Yep.
The output is going to go up, and the productivity will go up, and the revenue per employee will go up. And we're going to see this show up in the macro at some point here. We'll ask Brynjolfsson when. But that's very clearly what's happening in front of us. I mean, you're doing this for a reason. You're dropping mundane tasks. You're replacing them with high value tasks. That's got to hit the productivity, and it's got to hit the revenue per employee, which is, to me, the simplest measure of productivity. And then Cato rules the world.
Yeah, it's funny you mention Eric, because we're going to have a fascinating panel conversation actually later today, where I hope to also explore that with him and a lot of other folks. I'm fascinated by this. I think we're living in this sort of turning point. Somehow it feels like it. I tend to be more optimistic personally. I just think that, at least for me personally, the one data point that I have, it has allowed me to do more. So I'm hoping, positively, optimistically, that's what it means for society. But yes, it could have some other effects as well.
I think we've all experienced it. I said many times, I'm not less busy because of AI. I'm actually busier than ever. But I'm doing things that are much more fun, much more valuable. I'm producing things that I wouldn't have been able to get to before. He said last year at his keynote at Forward, I think it was Forward 7, he would be disappointed if we didn't see a 3 to 4x increase in productivity, which is massive when you think about a
I mean, just imagine an IT person at Daniela's company who was previously just sitting and categorizing these tickets. Now, of course, there was the time spent to actually classify the ticket that they're now saving, but imagine the context switching cost, right? Like they were doing something else, now they have to go back and classify these tickets, now they have to put their mindset back on doing their real work. Now you freed them up from that, that repetitive task of classifying tickets, and I actually do agree that maybe this is a bigger unlock than just the minutes saved. Imagine the productivity, the mental health, happiness of this person who can do much more now.
Yeah, right, because the paper cuts are just so demotivating. Exactly,
paper cuts is a good word, the productivity paper cuts.
Right.
Well, right, because doing those tedious, dull processes are the repetitive stress syndrome of knowledge work, really.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit about, both of you, when you're working on these kinds of projects and when you're working on them with other companies and when you're working at Cato, how do they progress? As you said, the business was skeptical at first, but do KPIs move along the way? Do you change goalposts? Do you shift focus and strategy?
So I think the amazing thing to see is that from this case, working with support, I have people just like addressing me down the hall and asking me for automation and coming to me and we're like, I have an idea, let's do this and let's do that, and that's super cool.
Awesome.
And from this use case, we actually, another project we're working on is actually shifting to generating a support assistant which will reply to tickets, which will read the ticket from the client and will analyze the data, will approach the right systems, and will craft a response. And that's something that is obviously way more complicated. We're talking about the multi-agent system when we're gonna have every agent as a persona and has like a specialized agent for everything. But I think that and in my vision and my imagination, I believe that eventually with the combination of vibe coding and the business itself, I do believe that the business owners, they will sit and they will develop the agents. And then you're going to have someone who is just like supervising this and orchestrating the whole thing. But I do believe that it will come to a point when developing and vibe coding will be so progressed that you will need the business to generate the agents and to supervise them.
If you bring on somebody because this agent thing's going to take off, you're not even the steep part of the S-curve yet, So you're building your team. What's the starter kit look like for somebody who's new to your firm?
So that's funny because I'm actually teaching someone now from scratch. He has zero experience with UiPath, with the agent infrastructure. So I think the first thing for me was like, you're going to sit down and you're going to do the academic courses of UiPath, which are free and you can do them, and you're going to have the certification. And once you have the basics, you're going to go and you're going to learn the basics of LangGraph. When you're going to have both of those and you understand the concepts of everything, hands-on. And I'm a big fan of hands-on. That's how I learn things, and I think that you need to have some context and then dive in, gonna make mistakes, that's fine. That's part of it.
Yeah, but Daniela, walk them through how you use Claude Code, because I think once you know the basics, the basic concepts, as you said, Academy course and learning about LangGraph, the actual act of writing the code, there's improvements there, right? So you were talking yesterday about Claude Code. Maybe fill us in on, are you teaching this new person to use Claude Code, or are they handwriting the code?
So we have like, luckily Cato is really adapting like the AI transformation and everything. So we have a lot of different tools within the company, and I'm really pro like take your tool and just dive in, use it, whatever it is. I'm personally using Claude Code, a big fan, and like for her specifically, I told her you have this, you have that, try those, and whatever is comfortable for yourself, go for it. And I know that some people would rather use Cursor, would rather use Copilot, or whatever there is. And I think, and we talked about it yesterday, like I don't come from a developer's background. I've been using UiPath like for the last 7-8 years. I've been leading teams, developing myself I grew up with the platform basically. Like when there was like 2 services for UiPath, I think. And when I got into coding again, into like the platform of vibe coding, was super cool to see. Like it would have taken me weeks and months maybe to develop something like that. Then you just start. You talk to the AI assistant and you ask them to help you write an agent, and you improve it with the time, and you ask the AI assistant to code review the agent you've built. That's like mostly supervising it, and you learn. And I think my best tip is just like try it.
So Taqi, this must be so gratifying for you to sit here with you own these tools, and here is a company that is actually making the tagline of this show come to life, which is Agentic AI meets ROI. What do you've presented an optimistic vision for how this could all play out, but what next year, at the next year's Fusion, would you like to say, would you like to brag about, and this is what we accomplished this year?
Right, I mean, I like to think I'm a technology guy, so I'll give you a technology answer. Honestly, for the ROI aspects and the societal impacts, I'm also learning. But from a technology lens, I think we have just barely started to scratch the surface. So there's new modalities for these agents. For example, rather than typing the instructions and describing the task, which sometimes is a cognitive load, right? Describing, I think you were joking yesterday, English majors are useful again, right? So that's an art and a skill that not everybody has, cleanly and clearly without ambiguity describing a task. So one of the things that we've announced at this conference is Project Delegate, where you can actually do the task and just hit a screen record button, and the agent watches you do it, so you can classify some tickets, and then it's like, voila, here you go, here's the automation. So that's an example of a new modality. We're also talking about conversational agents in a sense that you can talk to them via voice, via video, and they can be nice and interactive, much more than, and I'm not just talking about speech to text transcription, I'm talking about, I mean, you folks know this, there's nuances of emotion and stressing and like a live conversation. So I think these agents are going to become much more personal and much more interactive in that sense. We already process documents. That's more of an image modality, especially if documents are complicated. So I think just pushing the boundaries of what can be automated and making it so much more easier to automate, that's number one. Then I think there's just so much more to do in terms of trust and transparency. So we feel very strong there. The UiPath platform with robots has a very, very good way of monitoring what the robots are doing and going back in time if there was a mistake, and looking at the logs, etc., putting constraints around them, like security terms, what they can and cannot do. I think I'll steal a line from Raghu, our CTO. He said, because the tech is so different with agents, hence all the enterprise grade features also need to be different. So I think there'll be basically those two things that I'm looking forward to over the next year. Just amazing new ways of building and running these agents and these new modalities. And second, just there's so much more to do in terms of trust and monitoring, and how we actually take these agents to production at scale. And Daniela said she started with a scoped example, and that's because it makes it easy to monitor and measure, like you were saying, what it's actually doing. It's harder to measure and monitor more complex things. But as these measurement and monitoring tools evolve, we'll be able to do that. So then we'll be able to take more complex agents to production and hopefully yield more ROI.
It's an exciting vision. Thank you so much, Taqi and Daniela. Really a pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much.
It was great.
I'm Rebecca Knight for Dave Vellante. Stay tuned for more of theCUBE's live coverage of UiPath Fusion. You're watching theCUBE, the leader in enterprise tech news and analysis.